Screenless. Amanda Litherland, radio producer and host of Radio 4 Extra's podcast Radio Hour. Welcome to Creative Cuppa.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I notice you have a cuppa there. What are you drinking this morning?
I do. I'm drinking Yorkshire tea.
Oh, that's the best.
It's the best tea.
It's the best. Absolutely. Amanda, you studied medieval history. It's
Yes.
not very radio related, I suppose, up at the University of St Andrews. How did you end up in radio, working in radio?
Yeah, good question. Because people always say, like, oh, what did you study? Did you do a journalism degree or did you do radio? And I'm like, no, medieval history, the least connected degree to radio, possibly. So I did a lot of comedy and drama at university as well, because St Andrews is a very small town and you have to make your own fun. But it's a really lovely place to be, and there's lots of societies and that kind of thing. So yeah, lots of extracurricular stuff. I really did love medieval history, but I definitely did not try that hard. I kind of got to uni. When I went to uni, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be an academic. And then found out lots of other things to do. So I did do a little bit of student radio as well, but not loads. And I mainly did comedy, and I wanted to be a comedy writer, performer, and so that's kind of what I concentrated on. And when I finished uni, I applied for a BBC trainee scheme, which I got on, which I was very lucky to get on, the production trainee scheme, which I don't know if they do anymore. They do it in some forms, but not exactly. But in the one that I did, you did placements in TV and radio. And at the time, I thought that I wanted to go into telly and do comedy producing and then get into comedy that way. But actually, I was given a placement on the Chris Evans Breakfast Show on Radio 2, and I just loved it. I just loved what you could do with radio, because I'd done a TV placement before in arts, and it just took so long to get anything done. You know, if you're a runner on a TV show, it takes at least 20 people to make even the smallest thing, and it takes ages for things to get commissioned. Whereas in radio, you'd say, hey, I've got this idea. Can we do this feature today? Yeah, sounds great. Good. Go and do it. Yeah. And that was just fantastic, because I hate sitting around. I hate not doing things. I always like to be active and like to be busy. So yeah, I was working on the breakfast show and I just loved that. And then I thought, right, actually, no, I want to do radio and just find out, and then it kind of went from there.
Yeah, I have a foot in both worlds. I'm doing the soundtrack to an animated series, which is this juggernaut of so many, like you say, so many people that are working as a team. It takes a long time to do things, and then on the podcast side, we can do this. This will be done in half an hour, and by lunchtime it'll be edited. Mm-hmm. It's such a good turnaround, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, which is the beauty of it. And so I do I make my show, I have been making it by myself for ages, but I've got a producer who's working with me now, Chris, who's really great on the podcast. And so that's really nice to kind of work as part of a team. But, you can do stuff kind of on your own and just whatever you want. So it's quite freeing in a way that you have that autonomy. But then sometimes you kind of wish, actually, it would be nice to be part of a massive team. When you hear about people like This American Life, and actually, if they make a story, then 7 people listen to it and they're like, oh, sorry, maybe take out that one word here and maybe re-record this line. And actually you think, well, do I want it to go that far? But maybe not.
The thing I like about Podcast Radio Hour is that it's less a review show and more a celebration of the creativity out there, which is what I strive for on this podcast as well. So I suppose it's really resonated with me. And a classic sounding name, Podcast Radio Hour. That's fantastic. How did the show come about?
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I'm so glad to hear you like the show. It's really great because obviously, as you know, podcasts are a real labour of love, and it's hard to know when people are actually listening. Quite often I just sit in this cupboard and say things, and I never. Sometimes it feels like, is anyone actually going to hear this, or is it just for me? My mum always listens, so I do know that. But it started. I was working at Radio 4 Extra for a couple of years, making trails and duty producing. So that's kind of putting Radio 4 Extra together because it's all an archive network. So it's kind of like doing a big audio jigsaw. It's quite satisfying, actually. And working with the continuity announcers on Radio 4 as well to sort of make sure they've got all they need and everything. So I was doing that. And then Tony Pilgrim, who is the current head of 4 Extra, said that he wanted to put more podcasts on 4 Extra because we have a slot where we play out stuff like The Moth and TED Radio Hour, Radio Lab. 4 Extra's acquired some of those series. And so they wanted to do more stuff like that. And they said, you are a youth, which technically I guess I was classed as at the time. I'm 30 now, but I was like,
Could
in
take
my
that
late
compliment,
20s.
can't you?
I know, exactly. I was like, yes, I am. Very young. Do you want to? And then I think they knew I was really into podcasts and listened to lots of stuff and was working on a couple of side projects that never actually happened. But because I kind of put myself out there as saying, I do comedy, I'm comfortable speaking in front of a mic, I do all this, they thought I'd be a good person for the project. I mean, I don't actually know if they wanted me to host it in the first place. They just said, go away and think about this. And then I kind of came up with a format and I thought, well, we could. So it's kind of changed now, but originally we played out a couple of podcasts, had an interview with somebody that made one of them. And I thought, well, I could be the host. And then every week we could get on a separate co-host who comes along with recommendations. And they were just like, yeah, sure, sounds good. Go for it. And so I was very surprised. I just thought,
Brilliant.
Okay, great. That's how you get a presenting job. Just ask.
Yeah.
So that's how it went, really. And now, we've been going for 2.5 years and it's kind of gone through different formats. It's quite flexible, but that's nice. That's the beauty of the medium, really. You can change it to be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah. And I think, you're saying you're not sure from week to week if anybody's listening. I think there's enough variety in there that part of your show is going to resonate with someone. There's enough packed in. I mean, it's a whole hour of stuff every week.
It's a long time.
And there's a lot packed in there.
Yeah, well, I honestly... So I didn't actually come up with the name. I was given the name. They said, we want you to work on this thing called Podcast Radio Hour. We don't know what it is, but that's what the name of the show is going to be.
It's a very BBC name.
Yeah, exactly. And I have actually tried to change the name, but they don't want to because it is.
Oh, what would you change it to?
I don't know. I had this whole massive brainstorm of ideas that was stuck to a thing behind my desk at work, but I can't remember what that is because I haven't been there for months. But just something that sounds more like what it is, because Podcast Radio Hour could be anything, and also it doesn't come up in a lot of searches. So if you search it in some apps,
right.
It doesn't come up because the words are too generic. But anyway,
that SEO question again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But whatever, it's there. We deal with it. But yeah, an hour is a long time, and honestly, I quite often wish it wasn't an hour. I think an hour's too long. But again, I have to work with it. I have to do it.
You keep it interesting, so
thank you.
It does bounce along, doesn't it?
Well, exactly. So it does also give room for things can be a bit longer. I don't have to be as tight with edits as I might have to be, and can give things time. I think so. Originally, we used to play out whole episodes of podcasts, and we haven't really done that for a long time because, I find it more interesting to talk to people. My favourite bit is doing the interviews and other little features. Also, if you play out whole episodes, it's more complicated because you have to get express permission and people have to sign all forms and stuff. And quite often, most people are happy to do it, but some people, fair enough, were like, no. So, now we've gone down to more sort of shorter clips, maybe a 5-minute clip occasionally or even a 10-minute. We did an episode a while ago where we played out some first episodes of some dramas, which I think can work well because it's okay, well, you're hooked in, and if you like that, then you will go and listen to more. But I think it's more interesting to talk to people, I think. That's my favourite thing.
Yeah. Well, it's great, and it really shows the variety of podcasts out there. If you're into podcasts and you're looking for new podcasts to listen to, I really recommend you listen to Podcast Radio Hour because, it just shows the massive variety of podcasts in that medium that are going on at the moment. Amanda, where can people find you if they are looking for you online?
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Amanda Litherland. There's no A on the Amanda, just because it wouldn't fit. That's probably where I put most of my main work stuff. Or there's my website, amandalitherland.co.uk, which I haven't updated in a while. I should probably do. But thank you for listening to the show. I really appreciate it.
There are some podcasts that you listen to because you feel like you should, and then some are just a bit more kind of comfort blanket. You know where you are with them, and it's a nice little catch-up, isn't it?
I like to make sure that I feature smaller stuff that might, well, I say smaller, stuff with fewer listeners, as well as the kind of big things that you might have heard of, because I think it's so important to showcase some of the great things that people are making, and it's really hard to get people to listen to your show. And I actually do often feel the best after doing an interview with somebody who is kind of a new podcaster or has got a small niche show, because it's so much more interesting to talk to somebody who's really engaged, rather than occasionally, you can get some of those big interviews where they've just been on the circuit of doing interviews all day and they've said the same thing 7 times and they're telling you again. Yeah. And actually, it feels much more worthwhile to give airtime to somebody who really needs it.
Well, that's very good of you. Very good of you. I'll put the links in the show notes for you as well. But for now, thank you very much for joining me for a cuppa.
Thank you so much.